Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam, Trilokyam Sacharacharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha, Tvameva Vidya Dravinam, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvina Vadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So we're making our way through the negation of the 5 koshas. And we have been talking about the Vijnanamaya kosha, the knowledge sheath or the intellectual sheath. And if I remember last time, we talked about this very subtle way in which Shankara has talked about the ego sense as it's lodged in the Vijnanamaya kosha. How in the Vijnanamaya kosha I attribute to the self the qualities of the not self. Shankara talked about it being a shadow or a reflection of consciousness caught in the web of thought. Chit chaya. And the interesting thing about a shadow is that if you shine a light on a shadow, it disappears. So also, egoism is an assumed existence, not a real one. That's why I like to use Gaudapada's language, jiva bhavana, an attitude or a feeling. I'm a person. And then if we have this radical reversal of attention and go looking for that ego, it falls. And what you find is Chidakash, the space of consciousness alone. So what verse are we on again? You said 129?
192, 193.
192, 193. Will you
They're
help us out,
combined in
please?
one verse.
Yes. Will you help us out, please, Ganesh?
Shishyovacha Brahmena Yanyatha Vastu Jiva Bhavaha Paramatmanaha Tadupadharenadi Twananda Denarsha Ishyate Atosya Jiva Bhavopi nitya bhavati samsritihi anivartate tanmoksha katham me Sri Guru vada. The Shishya asked, the Supreme Self has come to consider itself as a jiva, through delusion or otherwise, is a superimposition which is beginningless. That which is beginningless cannot be said to have an end. So the jivahood of the self must also be without an end, ever subject to transmigration. Please tell me, O revered teacher, how then can there be liberation for the self?
So there's a lot packed into these two verses. It's a bit of a clumsy translation. I had forgotten, but Shankara himself uses the term jiva bhavana that I just talked about, that Gaudapada does. This jiva bhavana, this feeling that I'm a person, occurs in the intellect. So please understand, the self does not consider itself to be anything. The self is beyond all ideas. So here we're talking about how is it if ignorance is beginningless, how can it have an end? So what he's really driving at is he's setting up the argument with the Visishtadvaitins, the qualified non-dualists, who posit the eternal existence of the sense of individuality. So if I am a jiva, if God is the ocean and I'm a drop, will it ever end? Will it ever end? And what we have to understand here is that the cause of my feeling like I'm a person is ignorance. Ignorance can have no beginning but can have an end. So I will frequently say things like, I'm thinking of a song lyric. Now, right now, you are ignorant of the song lyric about which I'm thinking. For how long have you been ignorant of that song lyric? Beginningless. Oh Lord, you are the center of my life. It's called Center of My Life. Now you know the name of the song. That's the lyric. So your ignorance ended when you had knowledge. So even though ignorance is beginningless, it can have an end. There's another way we can look at this whole idea of beginninglessness. And we can go to the dream state. The dream is beginningless. Now, wait a minute, Jim. I went to bed at 11 o'clock last night. I got up at 6 this morning. I had a dream, I think, before I woke up. So it must have begun sometime before I woke up at 6. Well, from the standpoint of the waker, yeah. But when we are in the dream, they don't roll the credits at the beginning of the dream. The condition of the dream is it creates an assumed cause and effect past that the mind never questions. It has no beginning from the standpoint of my experience. The dream has an end when I wake up. So a dream is beginningless. And egoism is much like that. When I think I'm a person. I think I'm the body, or the body plus the personality. When I have this jiva bhavana going on, I never see it begin. I can see it end. So many of us have had the experience. You may be here in class, or in a deep meditation, or in the presence of a Mahatma, and all of a sudden everything gets very clear. Oh yeah, I am that empty space of consciousness. And then half an hour later, I got a ticket. Oh, I should have put more money in my meter. And oh, damn, I'm so stupid. Those cops did this to me. And all of a sudden, I think I'm a person again. And I never see it happen. Such is the nature of spiritual ignorance, is the veil comes down and you don't know it when it's happening. And when we're in that state, egoism seems so real. So, how do I get out of it? You need to emblazon this in your mind. If I think I'm a person, I'm deluded. No personal sense of self is real. Let's wait till that fire truck goes by. I see a little square. Am I still online, or did I drop the call?
Yes.
You're online.
Okay. So no personal sense of self is real. And frequently we get in what I call a yo-yo state. Sometimes I'm very clear. I know I am that ground of being. And then 10 minutes later, I'm completely identified. And then I wake up. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's just, it's illusion. I am that partless Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. I'm clear. And something else happens in the day and I get totally identified again. So it's very, very interesting. It's like dozing off and waking up, and dozing off and waking up, where we go in and out of knowledge, being aware, or the mind covered by ignorance. Any questions about this? Now, if you feel like a person all the time, don't worry about it. The time will come, keep scrubbing the mind, when you'll begin to get this intimations of yourself as that witness in consciousness. Thoughts, comments, questions? Next verse.
श्रीगुरुरुवाच सम्यक् पृष्टं त्वया विद्यान् सावधेनेन तच्छृणु प्रामाणिकी न भवति भ्रान्त्या मोहितकल्पना. The Guru replied, "O learned boy, you have put a proper question. Listen then carefully. Things conjured up by imagination, which is itself a product of delusion, can never be accepted as facts."
Yes. So, if you imagine the horns of a hare, it's not real. If you imagine the child of a barren woman, it's not real. If you think, if you imagine you are a person, jiva bhavana, the feeling, the thought that I'm a person, though vivid, it's not real. It's conjured by the imagination. It's like you get an email, and there's the logo of your bank, and they say, "You've been hacked. They've withdrawn thousands of dollars from your account. Call this number and give us your bank account number so we can fix it." And then all of a sudden you go, "Ah!" But then you look at the actual email address and you see, oh, they're phishing. It's not a real letter from the bank. Where did the missing money go? Never was missing. It was imagined. So also ego, with all its problems, are conjured up by the imagination. Ego always wants you to resolve the struggle of ego. Psychology wants us to deal with the vicissitudes of the ego. But yoga says, get out. Now, listen carefully. Last night in Gita, we had one of the most important verses in the third verse. It said, the wise should not unsettle the minds of the ignorant with the truth. We don't go around in the world using the Vedanta as a club to beat other people over the head. You meet the people in the world where they are. If they have no tools to know about this, you don't, oh, it's all unreal. You know, you just don't, you meet people where they are. So be very careful about talking about this. We do our own yoga. So here Shankara is saying, when you become aware that you're identified, drop it over and over and over. Next verse.
Prantim vina sasangasya nishkriyasya nirakritehe nakate tartha sambandho nabhaso nilatadivat. For the self which is unattached, without activity and formless, there can be no connection with the world of objects other than delusion, just like the blueness, etc., seen in the sky.
So here, he's using this image. Is the sky really blue? No. It's merely the way in which light refracts through moisture in the atmosphere. So also, my mind says to me, I am too fat, I am too skinny, I am too old, I am too young, I am too stupid, I am too smart, I am successful, I am a failure, I am lovable, I am not, I have this disease, I have that malady. Over and over and over again, we start to have stories, largely from our childhood, but we develop them as we grow up. Stories that define this jiva bhavana, ways of securing self. Well, what kind of person are you? Well, I'm very intellectual, or I am dyslexic, or all sorts of ways of defining me. And Shankara says, no, these are the qualities of the body, the prana, the manas, the buddhi, but they are never the qualities of me. Over and over and over again. Now, some of you, when you've talked with me privately, if I hear you repeating a story about yourself, I am blah, 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 blah. And I get the sense that unconsciously you use this story as a way to secure ego. Sometimes I push a little bit, try to get us to drop those stories, let them go. Let them go. It's all imagination. It's all ways in which the mind and intellect try to construct a counterfeit self, a shadow self, a phony self. Any thoughts about this? All right, next verse.
Swasya Trishtuhu Nirgunasya Kriyasya Pratyagbodanandarupasya Budhehe Bhrantya Prapto Jiva Bhavo Nasakyo Mohapaye Nastya Vastu Swabhavat. The jivahood of the Atman, which is the witness, which is beyond all qualities and activities, and which is subjectively experienced as bliss and knowledge absolute, is unreal and is but a delusion caused by the intellect. Since by nature it, the jivahood, is unreal, it ceases to exist once the delusion has been lifted.
So, if we have the idea that I, Jim, I, the person, am going to become something great and marvelous, I want to be a saint, I want to be a Mahatma, I want to be an enlightened person. That's just dressing up the delusion with new stories. What do we see? We don't fix the jiva. We see that jiva bhavana is unreal. Earlier, Shankara has used the classic image of the snake and the rope. We're not going to tie the snake up, stretch it out so it becomes a rope. We're not going to pull the fangs of the snake so that it doesn't hurt us. We're not going to take a baseball bat to it to beat it so it doesn't frighten us. I've got to get rid of ego. I've got to get rid of ego. like saying, I want to get rid of a rainbow or a mirage. What we need to see is it's not real. It's not anything substantive. It's a deeply held belief, more like a hypnotic trance, or like being, in a some sort of a weird state. What's real? That which is beginningless and endless, without qualities, nirupam, without a form, vigunaihi, without any qualities of mind, nirmalam, without any dirt, sat, pure existence, chit, pure consciousness, ananda, ooh, tricky word, means bliss absolute. But for now, we'll talk about it being no sorrow reaches there. The self is vast and empty. Yet it's not void, because it's full of me. I am. I know. I shine. You either see it or you don't. Oh, Jim, I'm getting more enlightened. Nope. You either see it or you don't. If you think you're a person, you don't. Even if you think you're a very pure person, you don't. If you see it, you know you're not a person. Nobody there. Just a bunch of stupid ideas. It's not real. So please understand, the individuality doesn't get all bright and shiny in the subtle intellect, in the buddhi. I have this profound realization, I'm not a person. It isn't real. That's the awakened state of mind, Buddha. Any questions about this? Next verse.
यावद्भ्रान्तिः तावदेवास्य सत्ता मिथ्याज्ञानोच्छम्भृतिस्तस्य प्रमादात् रज्ज्वां सर्पो भ्रान्तिकालीन एव भ्रान्तेर्नाशेनैव सर्पोऽपि तद्वत्. Having been caused by an error of judgment and false understanding, the jivahood can exist only as long as the delusion lasts. The rope is mistaken to be the snake only when there is an illusion. Once the illusion is destroyed, there can be no snake. So too in this case.
So Bhranti, the delusion, is caused by profound misunderstanding. How do I correct wrong knowledge? By investigation, vicharena, by means of investigation. How do I find out about the real nature of the snake. Investigate. Oh, it's not a snake, it's a rope. So what are we dealing with here? If it has a beginning and an end, if it occurs in time and space, if it has qualities or characteristics, it's anatman. It's not self. No personal sense of self is real. Discard it. Watch your mind. Watch for these repetitive stories. Oh, I always do, blah, 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 blah. I have reports that say that I am blah, 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 blah. Drop it. Koham, who am I? Aham Brahmasmi Brahman. Over and over again. The hardest part is when we are in that, what I call that yo-yo state, and ignorance has overcome the mind, for us to be able to be subtle enough to go, wait a minute, I'm thinking I'm a person, drop it. Oh yes, I'm that grounded being, that witnessing consciousness. Over and over again. In the beginning, it's only easy to do in either satsang here or in your own meditation, but eventually you've got to do it in the waking state while you're engaged in the world. And when you see ahankriti, this phony self, arise, drop it over and over again. Next verse.
अनादित्वं विद्यायाः कार्यस्यापि तथेष्यते उत्पन्नायां तु विद्यायाम् अविद्यकमनाद्यपि प्रबोधे स्वप्नवत् सर्वं सह मूलं विनश्यति अनाद्यपीदं नो नित्यं प्रागभाव इव स्फुटम्. So too, avidya and its effects are said to be beginningless. When there is rise of vidya, then avidya, even though it is beginningless, it is destroyed root and branch, just as dreams are destroyed on waking up. The phenomenal universe is not eternal. It is evident like the former non-existence.
So here again, he thunders that the world, and remember we talked about what is the world here. I think I'm a person. There's a world of name and form separate from me. I feel incomplete and need to make efforts. I'll be happy when, it'll be better if. That's the world. That's samsara. That's my mind. That's what needs to be destroyed, and it is root and branch when knowledge dawns on the mind. It is like waking from a dream. Some people call self-realization waking up from being awake. And here Shankara makes reference to kind of a term that they have in argument and logic called former non-existence. It's kind of fun to play with. So Here is a glass. I think I bought these glasses about a decade ago. For the sake of our conversation, let's say I bought them, I think it was around Christmas time of 2010. They were probably made that year for the Christmas season. So let's say, again, for the sake of our argument, this glass was made in 2010. Prior to 2010, it did not exist. For how long did it not exist? Beginningless, forever. Then in 2010, in some glass factory, they made the glass. So former non-existence came to an end, and now we have existence. Now, if I do the dishes tonight and I drop the glass and break it, existence will end, and we'll now have subsequent non-existence, which has a beginning and no end. These are just ideas. The best way to understand it is this sense of feeling like a person. We don't need to philosophically figure out when it began. You know, is it original sin? You know, whatever. It's unimportant. What's important is we can get out of it in a sattvic mind. How do I achieve a sattvic mind? Vairagya. Renouncing my attachment to this world. Renouncing my identification with any personal form of self. Then investigate. Koham, whom am I? It all just falls away. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
मनादेरपि विध्वंसः रागभावस्य वीक्षितः यद्बुद्धयुपाधिसम्बन्धात् परिकल्पितमात्मनि जीवत्वं न ततोऽन्यत्तु स्वरूपेण विलक्षणः सम्बन्धस्त्वात्मनो बुद्धया मिथ्याज्ञपुरःसरः. Although it is beginningless, former non-existence is found to have an end. So to the jivahood, which is imagined to be in the Atman, through its apparent conditioning, the superimposed attributes, like the intellect, is not real. But the other, the self, is intrinsically different from jivahood. The relation between the Atman and the intellect is due to the false knowledge.
So, how long have I felt like a person? Forever. Beginningless. It's very interesting because very few people think to investigate, who am I? Frequently, people will do a cursory investigation. Oh, I'm a person who has trouble with relationships, or I'm a person that always puts on too much weight, etc. We're always describing qualities of the equipment. And without thinking, I'm attributing to myself the qualities of the not self. We had this term earlier, adhyas, superimposition. And that's the problem. That's the problem. Now, we have indirect knowledge. You hear it from the teacher, you hear it from the scripture. Oh, I am that partless Brahman, I'm not the body. You think about it, you come to really believe it. I believe this. But you have to experience it directly yourself. That comes from intense renunciation and long meditation. When we began the book, remember I said, this is so powerful that if you do everything Shankara says, I can almost guarantee enlightenment. Well, this is very powerful. And unconsciously, many of us think, oh, if I read everything Shankara wrote, I'll get enlightened. We're now kind of getting to a place where many people, their understanding and their experience start to diverge. Why? Because we don't want to give up our identification with this counterfeit self. I love it too much because I think it's me. I don't want to give up my attachments, my stories.
I don't want to give up my pleasures. That's what I come back to at times. Yeah.
Well, when we start discussing the Anandamaya Kosha, we'll see I'm not asking you to give up your pleasures. I'm asking you to give up your attachments. Oh, I forgot to tell you, the world is void. There's nothing there. But we'll get to that. It's a fascinating discussion when we get to the Anandamaya Kosha. But that's the price tag for steady wisdom.
Can I ask a question about this as well, Jim?
Please.
So, since I've started studying Vedanta and listening to these ideas over and over, what I appreciate about the repetition is if I'm having the blues, so to speak, then these thoughts echo in my mind, and then I'm able to say, well, this too shall pass, this is transient, and I know this will come to an end, and it's not the real experience. But I only know this intellectually, and I only know the transience of sentiment. But in the moment, while the equipment is experiencing the pain or the depression, or, say I hurt myself, fell off a bike or something, it's still very, that is direct experience too. That is also very real.
It is. We do want to make a distinction for now between physical pain and the suffering that comes from the mind.
But even the mental suffering, say if I'm depressed on a certain day, then it is painful, and all I can tell myself at that time is this too shall pass. But how does one transform that pain into maybe a direct experience of bliss?
All right. First of all, who is experiencing the depression?
The instrument. And
yeah. So it's just a mind state. You are not touched by the depression. What we tend to do, though, is to go say, my life is so miserable. I have such a terrible life. I regret my past. I should have done this. Why can't I do that? Oh, I have suffered this loss. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, the I-ness actually compounds the pain, is what I'm.
Duh.
Yeah.
What Shankara is saying, it's literally the cause of it.
Mm.
So what he's saying here is try to discriminate between the phony self, which is wrapped up in all its stories, and the witnessing consciousness. And just, I let you go. You're not real.
Mm.
It's not real. And those stories, bad marriages, bad bosses, bad economy, bad this, bad politics, that's how the ego tries to keep itself, keep a grip on its own existence.
Mm.
How we define self inside our heads. And it's all just made up. Now, listen carefully. At one level in our practice, we want to create, substitute the bad thoughts, substitute good thoughts for bad thoughts. Instead of thinking I'm a terrible, worthless person and I'm ugly and no one will ever love me, no, I am a worthwhile person. What was the character that was on Saturday Night Live? I can't remember. Richard Smalley, whatever his name was. I can't, anyway, he was very funny, but he would look in the mirror and say, I'm a good person, stuff like that. And that's valuable at one very rudimentary level. But yoga says you're not a person. We're not reframing stories. We're getting out of it all. Now, no one said this was easy. It takes enormous courage to abandon all these ideas of self. And what doesn't help, I was talking to friends as well, well, the anxiety, that's a medical issue. I have to take a pill. You can go down that road, but yogi wants to be able to deal with the discrimination and the dispassion, the detachment, the viveka, and the vairagya. It's hard. It's hard. Just put it on the shelf for now. I don't know if that's helpful, Deepaji.
It is. Thank you, Jim.
All right, any other thoughts on this?
I have a thought.
Good.
I just was reading the Gospel of Ramakrishna, and he was saying that it is like mixing water with milk. It's so hard to separate one with the other. But if I keep churning the milk, doing my sadhana and the repetitive, listening and just practicing a little bit at a time through the years, then my milk becomes butter, and then it could be next to water, but it doesn't mix anymore. So yeah.
It's like making yogurt. where the milk turns into the thick yogurt, and then there's the whey, the clear watery stuff. I like that. All right, next verse.
विनिवृतिः भवेत् तस्य सम्यक् ज्ञानेन नान्यथा ब्रह्मात्मैकत्वविज्ञानं सम्यग् ज्ञानं श्रुतेर्मतम्. The superimpositions will cease to function at the dawn of right knowledge and in no other way.
Yes. I'm sorry, go on, please.
According to the scriptures, realization of the identity of the soul and Brahman is right knowledge.
Yes. So this is what liberation is, what self-realization is, what enlightenment is. It's the deep knowledge that I am Brahman. It's not having occult powers or being able to fly through the air or anything like that. It's when I know from direct experience I'm not a person, that it's all an illusion. I'm the groundless, or the ground of being, the formless, witnessing consciousness. Next one.
तदात्मानात्मनोः सम्यग् विवेकेनैव सिद्ध्यति ततो विवेकः कर्तव्यः प्रत्यग् आत्मसदात्मनोः. This realization comes only through right discrimination made between the self and the not self. That is why one must strive to discriminate between the individual self within and the eternal self everywhere.
Yes. So, how do I attain this moksha, this liberation? By being able to discriminate. So we've started with gross things. You look across the room and I see the couch. I'm not a couch. I'm the dude looking at the couch. And I go to the body. I'm not the body. I'm the one who knows the body. I'm not the prana, the energy. Oh, Jim, I'm being very spiritual. My chakras are opening. I have kundalini. Not saying this doesn't happen. That's not it. It's just phenomena. I'm not the mind with all its various states. I'm not the intellect with all its thoughts. And I'm not the jiva bhavana, the thought of self, the attitude that I'm a person. I can watch that come and go. So this constant discrimination. Next one.
Jalam pankavadhatyantam pankapaye jalam sfutam yatha bhati tatha atmapi dosha bhave sphuta prabha. Water which is extremely muddy appears as transparent water when the mud has been removed. So too the Atman manifests its clear lustre when the impurities have been removed.
So where are the impurities? In the mind, in the intellect. So I need to remove it. How do I remove it? Well, when there's dirt in my clothes, I throw them in the washing machine, and then I add a special dirt called detergent, which has the remarkable capacity to loosen the dirt, and then when the rinse water comes, all the dirt goes out, including the detergent. So the jnana vritti, the thoughts of knowledge, are spiritual detergent. This is the practice of knowledge. I use this understanding that I've gained through the scripture study, through class, as tools to keep letting go of my identifications. Get rid of everything that's get-riddable and see what remains. Next one.
अतो नायं परात्मा स्याद् विज्ञानम् अयशब्दभाक् विकारित्वात् जडत्वाच्च परिच्छिन्नत्वहेतुतः दृश्यत्वाप्यभिचारित दृश्यत्वाप्यभिचारी त्वान्ना नित्यो नित्य ईष्यते. For the following reasons, the intellectual sheath which you have so far spoken of cannot be supreme self. It is subject to change. It is inert and insentient. It is limited. It is an object of the senses, and it is not constant. A mortal, perishable thing indeed cannot be said to be the immortal, imperishable Atman.
So this vijnanamaya kosha, the intellectual sheath or the knowledge sheath, more literally, cannot be the self. Because it rises and falls, it's subject to change. Has qualities, characteristics. And one idea cannot see another idea. I illumine all ideas. And the absence of ideas. I am not the Vijnanamaya Kosha. These two discussions of the Manomaya Kosha and the Vijnanamaya Kosha are so incredibly important. So I strongly encourage you to spend time rereading them. Read Swamiji's commentary. Really try to internalize what Shankara has said here. Very, very subtle stuff. All right. Do we start the Anandamaya Kosha on the next verse?
Yes.
Okay, I think we'll stop here then for tonight and open it up for questions.
What verse are we starting on next week? Can someone tell me where we left off?
Can someone tell Justin what verse we're starting on next?
207.
207.
Thanks.
No thoughts?
Jim, I have a question.
Please.
Even the contemplation of the self and the not self is an idea, right?
Yes.
So all of Jnana Yoga is all ideas.
That's correct. But remember what I was talking about. This is what we call the jnana abhyas or jnana vrittis. These are special thoughts. These are thoughts that remove the other thoughts. Now, in the end, we're going to get rid of that too. The woman of knowledge does not need to discriminate. Let me see if I can draw a mundane parallel. So, do you need to constantly go to the mirror and keep checking that you have a human body?
No.
So you're not like the character in the Kafka short story who wakes up and all of a sudden he's turned into a cockroach.
No.
You might wake up with that weird idea, I'm a cockroach. But if you go look in the mirror, you go, oh man, no, I'm not a cockroach, I'm a person. But the state you're in now, you never worry about being a goat or a cow or a horse or a pig, as Ramana Maharshi would say. You know you have a human body. So for the woman who's rooted in knowledge, you're right. At that point, there's no need to discriminate. It's no longer a practice. It's just one's direct experience. But how do we come to it? Let's take the case of, say, a teenage gal who is anorexic. And in her mind, she has this condition called dysphoria, I think that's what it's called, where she thinks she's fat when in truth she's just very, very thin. So what she's got to do is learn to see what's really there in the mirror. It may take some time because she's got a delusory notion. Until she comes to see, no, that's skeletal, that's not thin. And eventually, if she recovers from her anorexia, she can see, okay, when I weigh 125 pounds, that's a healthy weight for me. People say I look good. It may take a while for her to believe that because of this weird hypnotic dysphoria. That's closer to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So right now, I'm just convinced I'm a person. Just like the anorexic, she's convinced she's fat. Because when she bends over, her skin wrinkles. She can't see that her hip bones are sticking out, that her ribs are sticking out, that you can see cords in her neck. She can't see it. That her knees are fatter than her thighs. She can't see it. Likewise, you and I cannot see I am the self. Even though it's always there, it's me. So in the beginning, we slow the mind down in the space between my thoughts, with my attention introverted. Who am I? There's nothing there. We do it over and over again. Now, our classic Vedanta sadhana starts with Shravana, you hear the words. Mananam, you think about it. And dhyana, you meditate on it. A lot of people, they just do the first two and they think that's going to be enough. Is that helpful?
Yes, very. Thank you, Jim.
Good questions. Any other questions? So Justin, are you there?
Yes.
So remember conversations where we've had on the phone when you've said about everybody having a need to feel important.
Yes.
Okay, that need to feel important is one of the stories we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. I know.
So,
I was relating with what you said. I remember you telling me many times tonight. You said when I
this
always.
is for other people as well.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So,
yeah, it's for everyone. Yeah.
But the point is, the yogi gives up the need to feel important. That doesn't mean that he says, I'm not important, I'm just a worm. That's another idea of self.
Yes, I understand. I find everyone that I've come across usually has a need for importance.
That's true. Like
it is one
everybody
of
thinks
the
they're a
things.
person.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Emerson said it best: the most basic human desire is a need of importance. And I noticed that was a way that I could.
That story.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah. You've mentioned it to me many times, so I was reflecting on what you were telling me in our conversations before. Yeah.
And these ideas of self can get more and more subtle. And then the ego will start using the path. Am I realized yet? Maybe I'm realized. If I can get other people to think I'm holy, then maybe I've got it. See, that's just another idea of self. Don't try to be an enlightened person. Be Brahman. Be that grounded being. Any other comments, questions? All right, let's sit then.